My name is Wei-Chiun. Welcome. Some of you are just stepping in. Some of you were here for the last fantastic workshop. I'm honored to be here today as an advisor with the Asian Canadian Workshop and as a novelist whose own work has been shaped by questions of family, identity, and belonging. The mothership of LiterASIAN is seated in Toronto every May now, and now in Ottawa, so it's festering across the country. Well done, Alan. And I have to say, yay, Alan. I have to say, my wife and I structured our summer vacation around this event. It's my fourth time in Vancouver in the last, I think, 6 years. I didn't come for the food, although I could have. I could have come for the mountains and the sea for the FIFA Cup. None of that. I came here because this is where Asian Canadian voices are heard, remembered, and celebrated. I've always said this is the epicenter of Asian Canadian writing and culture. And I say that having been born in Toronto, all right? So you can heckle that part. LiterASIAN continues to use the important work of building literary community, supporting emerging and established writers, and making room for stories that have been left on the margins for way too long. So this session is part of that larger conversation. It invites us to think about the histories we inherit, the stories we choose to tell, and the ways literature can help us bridge generations, communities, and lived experiences. I'm particularly excited about this panel because I've read their work. They're part of the next generation of Asian writers. They're not just humble, heroic, diasporic characters and stories. They're edgy. They force us to think. They break the mold of safe Asian inspired writing. So I'm really happy that they're here. So on behalf of ACWW, I want to thank our speakers, our organizers, the indispensable volunteers who make this work, our partners, and all of you for being here. Your presence helps sustain this community and the vital work of Asian Canadian storytelling. Our wonderful moderator today is Effie Powell. Yay! She herself is a writer, an editor, and a cultural connector who lives and works in Vancouver. Effie was writer-in-residence at Joy Kagawa House in April 2023 and is co-founder of Perilous Words, a queer writers' workshop. Effie is interested in interdisciplinary arts and storytelling and supported the Spring Queer Asian Writing Circle at the Joy Kagawa House, as well as collaborated with Theater as a Second Language to produce a storytelling workshop and performance. It's an absolute pleasure to see Effie again. Welcome.
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it. I'm very humbled to be part of the session and be with these authors and with all of you. And thank you so much for being here. Please come forward if there's a seat closer. I do like us to feel like we're in a circle of conversation and with friends. I'm going to just let the authors, Wiley and Jinwoo, introduce themselves, introduce their books, and do a short reading, and then we'll have conversation around their journey as authors, getting to the published book stage and what's happened along the way. As well, we're going to give time for both of the writers to sign books and give us also time to wrap up. Yeah, we'll sign the books here. You're able to purchase both books with Chinatown Wonders in the back, and we encourage you to do that. So please, Wiley.
Thanks, Effie. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all out on a beautiful, sunny Saturday. It's warm, so I see Todd is blotting his forehead. So thanks for being here. I'm usually fairly nervous coming into these things, but today I'm pretty relaxed because it feels like I'm it's a home team playing to the home crowd. So I feel like you're all friends. I've also been part of Asian Canadian writers for almost a decade now, and I have a T-shirt. I've been part of the LiterASIAN Festival as well for a number of years volunteering. So this is kind of fun to be on this side of things. I'm a Taiwanese Canadian writer. I write short stories, essays, and creative nonfiction, and this is my very first book. It's called The Astronaut Children of Dunbar Street. I think I'll do a very short reading from the very, very top, just to give you a taste of it. So, who here doesn't know what an astronaut family is? Do you all know? So yeah, I think it's pretty prevalent in Canada. So it's just a phrase to describe a situation where one or both parents are overseas, typically in Asia, while their kids grow up in places like Vancouver. And that was me. Both my parents returned to Taiwan to work when I was 12, leaving me and my older siblings to grow up in the Dunbar neighborhood. So I'm just going to read from the very beginning. It's the prologue. Come back to Taiwan. Baba is very sick and Ma has lost her mind. Hurry. For weeks, the texts have been flying thick and fast from my older sisters and brother, who are already in Taiwan. I am the straggler as usual, the youngest and the most disorganized. At least that's what I prefer to tell myself, rather than confront the maelstrom in my heart, my reluctance to see my own parents. I don't want to dredge up the past, so I home in on the technicalities of travel during a worldwide lockdown. It's 2021, and Taiwan is trying to maintain its enviable status of 0 cases. Only Taiwanese nationals are allowed in, and new arrivals must submit to mandatory quarantine in a government-sanctioned facility. Foreign travelers are prohibited from entry, rendering my Canadian passport suddenly useless. The only way for me to see my parents now is to prove that I am Taiwanese. But not only have I let my childhood passport expire, I can't find it anywhere. So I take the C bus downtown from my home in North Vancouver and walk through the eerily empty financial district to the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office on Georgia Street. Entering a full waiting room, I join the orderly line where everyone is spaced a body length apart. Masks plastered over what Ma calls our 蒜头鼻, the garlic bulb nose. The line is at a standstill, giving me time to consider the absurdity of the office's name, the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. It's a place that issues passports and visas. It offers consular appointments, but can't call itself a consulate general like other countries. Taiwan can't announce itself as an independent nation for fear of political reprisal. Even at supposedly apolitical events like the Olympics, Taiwanese athletes are forced to participate under the banner Chinese Taipei, as if Taipei were merely a city on the mainland. Excluded from major international organizations, Taiwan is left with an ambiguous global identity, while much of the world looks away. Today, only a small handful of countries recognize it as a sovereign state. It's a murky reality I've had to live with all my life. When my turn comes up, I stumble toward the counter with a deferential smile at the bespectacled auntie behind plexiglass. Mrs. Chen, I say, using my utmost respect for your elder's voice. I hand her my neatly printed form and 2 passport photos. You've been here for 40 years, Mrs. Chen states rather than asks as she reads my form. Mrs. Chen reminds me of aunties in Taiwan, efficient, brusque, friendly. With a black-dyed perm and stark white roots, she looks to be in her late 60s, from a generation that still observes guanxi, a closed network of influence and care. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead here. 5 days later, Mrs. Chen comes through for me. I rip open the couriered envelope, and a crisp green booklet falls into my palm. My new passport. It feels foreign, yet alive. 40 years after leaving Taiwan for Canada, I am Taiwanese again. I feel the placental pull of my homeland, just as my parents must have felt all those years ago. My stomach lurches at the memory of my parents leaving. Suddenly, I am 12 years old again, watching their plane take off from Vancouver International Airport, my feet rooted to the polished floor as the jet carrying my parents roars ever higher into the sky. Then, months later, when life settles in without them, they return. 10-day visits followed by the inevitable turnaround to see them off again. When people ask about my childhood, the airport is what comes to mind. I'll leave it there.
Okay, so my name is Jinwoo Park. I was born in Korea, Seoul, like many other Koreans. And I came to Vancouver when I was 12. And my dad, he didn't open up. He bought a pizza shop right across from the Vancouver Public Library. And it was called Amore Pizza. And then when I asked him, what does amore mean? He didn't know, but he said, well, it's where you get more pizza, amore. Not knowing that, in Italian, it means love. So, and then for the longest time, I called it amore pizza. Yeah. Yeah, he was known to give generous amount of cheese. That's why it did well. And then we eventually moved away, to New York, Long Island specifically, when I was 16. And that was a big change because suddenly I had to study for the SAT. And that is not a pleasant experience when you're grade 11 and moving to a new place. We eventually moved back to Canada. I think my parents said something about how they missed the rhythm of Vancouver compared to how it was in Long Island, which, the food definitely was lacking over there, where we were, Nassau County, like not a lot of Asian food available. And not a lot of friends available either, actually. Not a lot of community. So we moved back, and I ended up going to McGill. And then I started my whole thing with like creative writing and fiction, which I temporarily abandoned in the latter half of my 20s because of the fact that it doesn't make you money. Yeah, so I had to kind of put it aside, but I still wrote this thing because I wanted to have fun. I wanted to write something that I could really feel joy from. So I wrote this like Born Identity plus Rush Hour plus all sorts of other things with like Korean characters, North and South Koreans with a Korean American. I rewrote it like 2-3 times. But it wasn't until the Wong-Chu Award that I actually got my first validation that this thing had legs. And in many ways, the ACWW gave me my start. It gave me my confidence as a writer. So once again, I thank Alan, I thank everyone who came before him, as well as, who built up ACWW and then also are maintaining and growing it, expanding it. So I thank the community. I thank the group. This is my first LiterASIAN, so I'm excited to be here. Yeah. So enough about me, enough about, my feelings for ACWW, So I will talk about my book. My book is called Oxford Soju Club. It is about three Koreans, a Korean American, a South Korean, and a North Korean locked into a spy game in Oxford when a North Korean elite gets assassinated. And I will read like Wiley did, from the top, actually, where the central event that kicks off everything happens. It's basically where Johan, who is the North Korean protagonist of this novel, finds his mentor, Doha, who is the spy master in Oxford, stabbed in an alleyway, and that's where the whole mystery starts. So here I go. Johan finds Doha stabbed in an alleyway, barely wide enough for two people. At first, he thinks it is not too late to save him. He turns his head to check for an attacker as he crouches down to where Doha is slumped on the ground. He has been stabbed in the abdomen. Underneath Doha's coat, blood soaks his white shirt of deep crimson. The knife cut into where he would be guaranteed to bleed out. As Johan reaches to open Doha's coat wider, he feels a hand on his wrist, and he looks up to find Doha's eyes open. The grip is weak, but it gradually tightens as Doha puts all his remaining strength into his hand. Doha's eyes lock on Johan's with a kind of intense gaze Johan has never seen from Doha before. "Joanna," he says in Korean, which makes Johan pause. It has been a while since he has heard him speak their own language. "I told you to stay back at the flat." By instinct, Johan wants to apologize for his insubordination, but he knows such words are meaningless. He glances down at the flowing blood, takes out a handkerchief from his pants pocket, and puts it to the wound. It becomes drenched immediately. "Don't bother," Doha says, noticing Johan's brewing desperation. "I don't have long, so listen carefully now. Everything depends on this." He pauses to breathe and winces a few times as he grips where the knife went in. "Soju Club, you know the place," Johan nods. "That's where she'll find you. Dr. Bu, she's coming here. She has a plan to get you away from the Americans, the South Koreans, from everyone. She's coming tonight. Tomorrow, Soju Club, Dr. Bu," Doha whispers, his breathing getting more ragged. "Commander Doha, please, when is she coming?" "She'll find you. Just wait. She'll come for you when the time is right. Johanna." Doha keeps saying Johan's name, unable to continue but wanting to speak. His trembling hands tries reaching for him, but he lacks the strength to do so. Johan leans in and puts Doha's bloodied palm to his cheek, feeling the damp smear on his skin. "Live, Johanna, live." With those words, a trail of dark red trickles down from one end of Doha's mouth to his chin. His head falls slightly to the side, but his eyes remain on Johan, who looks back as it hits him. Doha is dead. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, both of you. Well, you spoke about the importance of Jim Wong-Chu's Emerging Writers Award in this part of your journey. And the commonality is that both Wiley and Jinwoo entered in the 2021 award. And the other author, Jenna Lee Austria Bonifacio, I asked her in preparation for today to get some of her reflection, and she said it was Ted Acuitas who suggested she enter, and she knew that deadline would change her life. So I was curious to hear from both of you where you were at that time, what prompted you, and maybe just a sense of what happened from that point.
Yeah? Okay. So you mentioned generally Austria Bonifacio, and it's very interesting because I feel like the prize was maybe the second feather in my writerly cap. The first one being the Banff Center, where I actually got into the Emerging Writers Workshop, and Jenna Lee was there with me in 2019. And I remember talking to her about, writing contests and this kind of thing. So I think the Wong-Chu Emerging Writers Prize came up, but neither of us thought we were ready because we just had gone to this workshop with a couple of short stories. And I guess I call it the second feather because so getting into the Banff workshop was a big deal for me. And I realized, the stories I brought were probably not bad. Then I thought, okay, what's next? And as all the writers in this room know, having a deadline is wonderful. I mean, it's both terrible and wonderful, right? And so I think this prize submission deadline came up for that. Was it December?
Yeah.
I think it was December. So I had, at that time, a collection of short stories. I think I had about 10. And I thought, well, I'm going to try submitting it. And so that year, we were the 3 finalists. And then, of course, Jinwoo won. Damn it. No, well deserved. And then from there, the 3 of us, like all the finalists, got publishers. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I do think, coming as a like being shortlisted for a prize like this just puts you into that feeling of like, maybe it's possible. Maybe a book is possible. That it's not just in your head, right? And I think that's that external validation piece that does something, even though you're supposed to write for yourself. You need to also reach an audience. And when the audience comes back, the jury basically says, hey, this is pretty good. It spurs you on. It is not the version, the manuscript that I submitted for the Wong-Chu Prize was 2020, and it changed a lot. It went from a collection of fictional short stories to what it is today. Half a decade later, it's now a memoir. But I think that first instance of being validated, if you will, like, hey, your writing is pretty good, helped me keep going. So that's what I would say. And in fact, I'm going to give a little plug for the prize. For those of you who have a fictional manuscript either ready or almost ready, I believe the submission window is open. Is that right, Alan? Until September. So for all of you writers out there, I'd encourage you. You just don't know. And if nothing else, it's a great deadline to work towards. Yeah.
Yeah, so my story is kind of similar, but also a little different because when I was out there in Montreal, I felt very isolated. I felt like I had nobody around me who was sort of like-minded or, was also a fellow Asian and a writer or an artist of any kind. And so there was a time of my life in 2019 where I was really seeking that out. I remember I was working at a game company as a narrative designer, and I was connecting with other like artists in the area under the umbrella of Asian Creators Network. This is like way back in the day. Like there was like this like subtle Asian traits and like that kind of stuff. If anyone remembers, it was like a meme group of like a Facebook meme group of like Asians, and then like a whole bunch of stuff had branched off of that. And then one of it was the Asian Creators Network, where a bunch of young creatives were like, let's actually make this like meme group mean something. So me and like a couple other people on one of them, we were the Montreal chapter leaders. And we were just basically just trying to get anybody, right? Like anybody. You could be a filmmaker. You could be like, you don't even have to be a filmmaker. You could have made a YouTube video and you could join this thing. So we were doing this. And then one day An told me, hey, do you know, like, and this is way deep into like COVID time now, like An says like, hey, there's this thing from ACWW that there's like a submission thing that you should totally go for. And I was like, I don't know, this manuscript is pretty embarrassing. Where it said it was pretty juvenile back then, but then I had rewritten it a few times by then. And then so An and I, we kind of like worked the initial chapters, because I think it was like you submit like the first two chapters, and then if they consider you for like an additional like the further round, and then you submit the whole thing. So I really worked those two chapters thinking, yeah, this is not going to go anywhere. Whatever, man. Like, I don't have to work on the entire book. I'll just work the two chapters and that's it. Because I was in the middle of my third rewrite of this book. And the first two was super polished. The rest of it, it wasn't even there. And then I got the email and I was like, oh, okay. So like, I have to now come up with a whole book after that. So that was some ridiculously busy time. Just like, yeah. But, and it also coincided with like, when my partner was pregnant. So, you know, but all in all, it worked out. And when I won, I was like, you know, my question was like, why me? You know, why this book? And then, you know, like, Jenny is another amazing friend in literature who supports everything I do whenever I'm in Toronto, and I go pretty often these days. And I think that was it, right? Like, I think the first reaction was like, why me? But then also the other reaction that took over was this idea of now I get to be a part of something bigger, right? Like I get to be a part of this Asian Canadian literature legacy. And that really motivated me to sort of like, you know, take this book out there, walk with confidence, and also just shout like ACWW's praises from the rooftops. And I, once again, highly encourage anyone who's got a book in them to submit to this, because, you know, even if you don't get anywhere with it, like, it gives you a structure. I think that's what I did it for. I did it as a way to sort of push myself and go like, I'm going to race towards this deadline, and no matter what happens, I will still have something at the end that I could work with. And it's great for that. But once again, I mean, this is the thing that gave me my first validation. And this is really like, I will always have ACWW's back for this one. Yeah.
Thank you. I will as well. Sorry about that. Believe it or not, we just have about 10 minutes, and then we're going to give a chance for you to bring your book up, have a one-on-one with the writers, and chat a bit more. Maybe you have a question you don't want to ask. I do have one question from Wayne, which I will ask in a minute, but I did want to say, Jenna Lee said one of the nicest things when the book came out was being embraced by ACWW, the family in Vancouver and beyond, and from every type of event, walking in Chinatown to meeting in a living room. She's embraced it all. And I think that's what it feels to be in community, to build community, to strengthen our connections with each other and bring this energy to life, as well as our individual creativity and ways of expressing ourselves, ways to share our gifts and stories with other people, because then through these stories, we don't feel so alone. And Jenna Lee also shared how she could see from both of you, you're writing about culture, language, being in the diaspora, having these multiple identities through your work. So I thank you so much and want you to have a couple of closing remarks before Wayne wraps up, and we'll have time for a signing. Either of you?
Do you want to first?
About the diaspora? Is there a question? No. Oh, Wayne's question is, would you have done anything differently?
Oh. Wait, like about the book?
Yeah, about the book, or maybe the way you promoted it, or what you've learned along the way. I could add to the question, could be what you've learned along the way, because you've talked about highlights and the importance of being validated and gaining confidence. And I think that says a lot, because a lot of people will say, because I do some storytelling, and a lot of people will say, I don't have a story. And we all have stories.
The story, it turns out, And so I've been doing this book tour, I guess, and everybody who comes up to me says, "Oh, thanks for writing," and then this reminds them of something, or they share something, and I feel like everyone's got such interesting stories. It's just whether you wish to write it down. I would say that the journey has been both more difficult, but also more rewarding than I would have expected going into this. Almost, when did I start thinking about writing a book? Probably like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I thought, how hard can it be to write your own story? You already know it. But it turns out that memoir is one of the hardest genres because you have to be brutally honest with yourself, with all of your assumptions. And I think to get underneath the motivations of like why you're writing, and yeah, it takes a lot of reflection. So it is a hard thing to do, but I would also say it's extremely rewarding because what better thing to do than to get to know yourself? And I've loved the journey of meeting so many of you. Like, I think if I didn't have this book, I wouldn't have met half the room. And it's a wonderful thing to have community. I think when Jinwoo said that it's a lonely thing when you're like asking for other artists to join you and there's just, you don't know where they are. I would say having a writing community, having an artistic community is extremely, nourishing, I guess feels like a cliche, but it fuels you, especially when things get hard, right? I see some of my writing crew back there. I just want to give a shout out to a couple of them who encouraged me even as late as last year. Before I found my publisher, I was ready to quit. I just thought, I've been working on this forever. It's never gonna happen. Why am I bothering? I'm just going to abandon this project, right? And they said, no, it's great. Keep going. Just keep going. And sure enough, like 6 months later, I found a publisher. So all to say, I don't know, the power of community is amazing. Writing itself is a deeply... I don't know, what would you call it? Like it's an excavation exercise, but it's also a very deeply revealing thing to do. And I think it's a wonderful thing to sort of peel all the layers of your consciousness, if you will, and to get into that creative well there's nothing better when you're in it. But I guess in closing, I would just say that I am really grateful for this community. I too share Jinwoo's gratitude for just knowing that all of you have my back and I will have yours. So keep going for those of you who feel inclined.
Like everything you just said, kind of how I feel too about it. And in many ways also, I think it's because for instance, like I didn't have a lot of people that I could look up to when I was writing this book or when I was being a Korean Canadian specifically. For some reason, not a lot of Koreans just go into writing in this country. As opposed to exactly, that's what I hope to do. As opposed to, let's say, the Korean American writing society is huge, right? Like, I mean, they have some titans like Min-jin Lee, Chang Lee, those people with new upcoming stars like Earl Kwan who are just absolutely shattering the scene. But here, we have Anne Y.K. Choi. I think I've looked up to her forever, and she has been the only person. And then now, there are more people now. I mean, I could still count all of them in my fingers, on one hand, including June Her, who's a middle grade author, people like that. But I've also had people come up to me and go hey, I really like what you're doing. I didn't know you could write, we could write an Asian-only spy thriller set in Europe that is about actually that is basically a metaphor for the lives of the diaspora, because that's what this book is about. It uses that spy genre to talk about how we, as immigrants, we always wear these masks that allow us to hide ourselves so we can adapt, we can survive. But at some point, we do have to, take those masks off and actually like step into our truths, because survival is not enough. We have to thrive. And that's what we need to do. We need to find our own truths and get rid of these things that we've done to ourselves to adapt, to hide ourselves. And seeing that, I realized sort of like the importance of being part of that community, of that like collective legacy of basically I'm inspired by other people, I am being validated by other people, and then in turn I inspire others, I validate others. It's about making that ladder that we climbed into something a little more sturdy, right? We've come this way thanks to a lot of people who've come before us, and our task is to basically make sure that the path forward for others coming behind us is much better paved. And I think if you ask me if I would have done this, like how differently I would have done this, I would have actually seeked out ACWW much earlier. I think I would have seeked out a community much earlier. I would have been more proactive about it, instead of sort of waiting for a community to happen around me and go like, where is everybody? Instead of that, I would have just gone to where everyone is. And once again, because that is where we sort of draw our source of power ultimately. I think when this book was getting nowhere in submissions with agents or publishers, I think it was the award and the fact that it did have validation from all these people who believed in the book. I think that really kept me going. So once again, if you are part of the community, please participate, please, help each other, please, read other people's, and also just and if you are someone who's a little more ahead of the line, then help other people in the back, right? I think that's what this is all about, and that's what I hope to be. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Looking? How are we doing? I love the final message of paying it forward and helping one another out. So listening to today's conversations, I was struck by the fact that books, they don't emerge from nowhere. They only arise out of hard work, families, and communities. Yeah, and when I think of Wiley's case, 8-9 years, and I tracked for some of those years, and they were hard years because writing is not easy. She used the term self-excavation because that's what it entailed. And when I listened to the earlier speakers, Keiko and Kagan, it's like there was a lot of self-excavation to make that work happen. In many ways, that's the legacy that we're celebrating today, not simply the success of Jinwoo and Wiley, but the continuation of a literary community that invests in one another and ensures that the next generation of Asian Canadian writers will have the chance to tell their own stories. So thank you, Effie, for guiding today's conversation with such thoughtfulness. Thank you, Wiley and Jinwoo, of course, for your generosity, honesty, and continued hard work and role modeling. And thank you all for being here. Readers, listeners, and supporters are every bit as important to this literary community as the writers themselves. So please join us for the signing and book buying and just getting to know these guys a little bit. And let's give them one final round of applause for being here.